platform. And I'm excited about your topic because creating radical change to industries based on thinking outside of the box is critical. And I think even as we've all entered into COVID, we have felt the crunch on what that means for our business and the need to disrupt the way that we've been doing business on a day to day basis. I know Tanya Hicks can also agree with what I'm saying. We've been on many of these video conference calls, building our brains, building our knowledge to ensure that we could go to business in new ways. So, Stephanie, I'm super excited about your topic, and I really just want to turn it over to you so you could dive in and start to tell us how we can think differently as we understand the big picture and pivot effectively.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. If I can get permission to share my screen, I'll pull up my PowerPoint and just give some visuals because as adult learners, as I like to say it, we learn and retain by hearing and by seeing. So there we go. We've got permission to share. So this will just guide you along as I talk. Let me get the slideshow started and we will get this show on the road. So, the concept that I want you to think about is this concept called disruptive elevation, how to get your train on the right track. And I want to use that imagery as we go throughout because, life can derail us and we want to make sure that we're able to get back on the right track. And so, here's that familiar imagery, when you see the light at the tunnel, many times you are faced with the question of, is this really a light at the tunnel or is this a train about to run over me? And when you are faced with disruption, that latter can be the case. So, disruptive elevation is basically this concept of when life doesn't go as planned, but goes exactly as it should. And this, it helps us to engage disruption as a way of elevation as opposed to just something that is derailing us. So, as we're thinking about disruptive elevation, I want you to think about in your businesses, in your personal life, in your mindset, what disruptions are you facing? Because you cannot fix what you will not face. You've got to be clear about what those disruptions are. You've also got to decide, what disruption do you desire to create? Because as entrepreneurs, oftentimes the best results come when you are the disruptor yourself. And then who do you need to punch in the throat? Now, I know you're like, okay, this woman is off the chain. We are talking about businesses and getting us back on track, but here she is talking about punching people in the throat. Here's the imagery behind that. I want you to think about disruption. First of all, I want you to think about this saying adversity guards the door to success. Adversity guards the door to success. And I want you to think about adversity as that bully on the playground. She is standing there big and tall between you and your destiny, whether that is your personal desires, your business desires. She is standing between you and what it is you need to get to, what you need to disrupt in order to elevate. Well, you can kindly ask her to move aside or you can punch it in the throat. And so what we want to focus on is being forceful. And again, I'm not advocating violence, but I just want you to use that imagery of you taking control of your decisions and pushing through. So let's move forward. So, you're in the right place if you are, you're feeling stuck. You're like, okay, I'm not really going forward, I'm not going back. What is the deal? You may also be feeling, tired of being ordinary. You want to be the standout in your industry, the standout in your business. May be ready to make this next half the best half for those of us who have matured in this business and don't feel like, we've got a lot of time left and we want to make the best of what we have left. You may need to make yourself a priority because as you're dealing with disruption, many times you can switch to that caregiver role and take care of everyone but yourself. You may be ready to go from broke to breakthrough because as you're facing these disruptions, it definitely can have an impact on your finances and you're ready to break through that and get to your prosperity. And you may want more, but you don't know where to begin. So I'm going to give you a framework as we go through this, and then of course we're going to be able to talk about it at the end as I share these few points. So, you know, of course, who I am. I'm Dr. Stephanie D. Barnes. I am what I like to characterize myself. I'm a corporate attorney a writer who moonlights as a corporate attorney. At my heart, I am a writer. I love to write. It's how I express myself. It's how I get from disruption to elevation. And primarily, I help women to create the lives they desire and deserve through my coaching program, C Suite Women's Network. I've been in business. My technical name of my corporation, or my LLC rather, is the Fruition Group. And I've been in business since 2010. And over that, the lifespan of my business, it definitely has evolved. I have always been focused on helping women to create, again, the life they desire and deserve, whether that is owning their own business, expanding their business, or becoming their personal best so that they can be the leader that their business needs. And of course, I use all of my experience as a Harvard lawyer and to really help women to be advocates for themselves and advocates for their business. So I have, of course, been an international speaker. I've been featured in the Huffington Post. I've done TEDx talks. But at the end of the day, I am also a woman who has experienced disruption and been determined to create elevation. So, with that, I just want to share with you really quickly 5 steps that I want you to think about as you are pivoting from disruption to destiny. And I love using the word destiny, even though we're in a business context. I mean, you know, the businesses that we put our heart and soul into, it's our life's work. It's not just some side hustle. It's not just something we're doing. It is our destiny, the legacy that we want to leave behind. So I want you to really embrace that word and embrace the importance of that word as we move through this. The first step that you have to do is to surrender. And I know you're like, okay, look, I'm trying to move things forward. You told me I need to punch people in the throat. You told me I need to grab my destiny. Now you want me to surrender. Here's what is the power of surrender. Surrender is actually a power move because you have to surrender to this commitment or surrender this commitment to what was so that you can embrace the possibility of what can be. Because if you are so committed to the way my life was supposed to go, this business plan was supposed to go exactly this way, you won't be open to the possibilities of taking it to the next level. So that's the first step is you have to surrender to the possibility of what could be. The next step is to be mindful. And this is something that is so important as a leader, as a business owner, and especially in a time of disruption, is to be mindful. And mindfulness is an awareness. It is an awareness of your thoughts, your behaviors, your surroundings, the people. It is really making a conscious decision to be aware of what's going on around you because you can't make good decisions if you don't know what you're dealing with. So, being mindful is this commitment to, first of all, being aware of your thoughts. Because here's something I want you to remember: every thought creates a future. Every thought creates a future. So that means if you have thoughts that, oh, this is a bad time, nothing good's going to happen out of this, I'm just derailed, this is just a disaster. Well, guess what? That is the future you create for yourself. So you have to be mindful of your mindset so that you can surround yourself with people, actions, behaviors, and environments that actually position you to move your business forward. So the second step is being mindful. The third step is actually creating a vision. And, you know, the power of your thoughts is only as powerful as you translating those thoughts to actions. So you have to create a vision. What is it that I truly desire? Now, one of the things that you may notice, I use the word desire a lot. Now, I'm an attorney and I can't, avoid that. I'm also a nerd. I love the etymology of words. And as an attorney, I like to remove ambiguity. And, we have to be very exact in the words that we use. And I love the word desire because it truly focuses on what it is that you wish to bring forward. Want sometimes can be ambiguous. It can mean lack, it can mean desire. So let's stick with a clear word. So create a vision for what it is you desire. Write that out. And when you write that out, writing, first of all, gives things significance, but it creates in life, the thoughts that you have in your mind. So you have to actually create that vision, because what you see is what you'll be. And that's not just a trite saying. It's again, when you're mindful to what it is you're seeing, you create that vision, then you're able to get to this powerful point, and that's where you're able to decide. And again, I told you I'm a nerd, love to study words. I love this word decide because at the heart of this word, side, is this Latin word that means to kill or to cut off. And when you desire to move from disruption to elevation, when you desire to create something out of nothing, you've got to make a decision to cut off all options but the options that move you forward. And so, in your business, in your mindset, in your team, in your interactions, in what you do, what you read, everything that you do has to be connected to your vision, right? Which is connected to being mindful, which is connected to that surrender of possibility. And it's all in your decisions, because knowledge without action is just trivia. So, when you know what it is you desire to do, you've got to make decisions that enable you to be able to do what it is you desire. Otherwise, you're just spouting aspirations. So, just want to give you a few key points as it relates to making decisions. Here's some powerful questions that you can ask yourself. First of all, ask yourself, what can you control right now? We can't control the pandemic. We can't control what the government does. We can't control the economy per se. But there are things that are within our control that we need to focus on. So, first of all, ask yourself that. Ask yourself also, what can you do right now? Because sometimes we get so consumed with the future and the past that we don't focus on what we can do right now. And so that's all that you can control is your right now. So you have to ask yourself, what can I do now? Here's another question. What can I do regardless of my circumstances that has, here's an important question, return on investment? Because we're in the business of business, right? We want to make money. We may be committed by passion and desire, but at the end of the day, we're in this. This is our life's work. It's how we make our money. It is about driving things to the bottom line. So we've got to ask ourselves, what is going to have a return on investment? Which goes back to that second step of being mindful. Because when you're not mindful of this question, is this really
Ash, oh,
an
there we go.
investment?
Hey, Stephanie, can you repeat your last sentence? You just froze for like 1 minute.
Ah,
1 second. Yeah.
okay, no problem. Okay, I was saying that you have to ask yourself, what can you do regardless of your circumstances that has a return on investment? Because we're in the business of making money. We're a business. Even nonprofits have to make a profit. So regardless of whether you're in a nonprofit space, for-profit space, you've got to make a profit. And so you've got to be mindful, going back to that second step of, is this an actual return on investment, or am I wasting my resources, wasting my time? But this again goes back to that concept of being mindful. And then you have to ask yourself, what do you need? Need, again, being specific about your words. What do you need to do right now? It might be cool to do it right now. Everybody else may be doing it, but what do you need to do right now? And again, you're mindful of that question and you make all your decisions to focus on being able to do what you need. And then you have to ask yourself, what would you be doing right now if everything were going as you planned it? What would you be doing? And this helps you to remain hopeful, and it helps you to remain connected to your original purpose. Why did you get into this business? Who are you trying to serve? What is it that you're trying to do? So these are 5 decision making questions. When you ask yourself this, it really positions you again to surrender to what was so that you can embrace what can be, to be mindful of the thoughts, behaviors, actions, investments that you're making, so that you can ensure that it supports your vision so that you can make those powerful decisions. And the last step is to be deliberate. It's all about action. In my coaching program, I always like to focus on this concept of women being the CEOs of their lives. And being a CEO has a very operative word. executive. It's not the chief maybe officer. It's not the chief wishing officer. It's not the chief thinking officer. It's the chief executive officer. So in your business, you've got to be deliberate about making those decisions, which again goes back to being mindful because coming up with a plan, coming up with a strategy is just the first step. It's all about what are you going to do to bring that plan to fruition? How are you going to execute? So being mindful plus being deliberate creates that power. So you've got to be deliberate. So finally, you have to put in the work. You have to put in the work. And so I want you to think about this concept of work from this perspective. First of all, you have to win by losing sometimes. We are facing some kind of losses, all right? But sometimes these losses are things that are not true losses, but actual releases. What are you being released from? And one of the things that I want you to stretch your thoughts around is you're being released from being ordinary. You're being released from doing things the way we've always done them. And so that loss is actually a win. And so you've got to be focused on really understanding where your wins are true wins because you're being released from something and you are not truly losing. Because again, it's all about that mindset. You also have to own your issues and do something about them. We can't control other people, but we can control ourselves. And remember early on, I talked about you cannot fix what you will not face. So, whatever it is that you are lacking, whatever is keeping you from your desire, if you're in your own way, you've got to own that. And I want to just say I'm a huge advocate of therapy and believe that it is as much a part of a successful business plan as any other advisor, because you are the leader in your business and your mind is what fuels your vision, what fuels your action, and what allows you to inspire others. So you've got to realize how this disruption is affecting you and avail yourself of those possibilities to actually um, deal with them so that they are not holding you back. And then here are the R's. These are a bunch of R's, but these are great things that you have to do to put into work. You've got to release yourself from this concept that you're a failure and embrace the wins that you're actually achieving. You have to refresh and renew. Because sometimes when you face a disruption, it's not truly a disruption, but it is this opportunity to take a moment and take care of yourself, do some things that you've not been able to do because you've been so busy. Rejuvenate and recommit to why you got in this business in the first place. And then ultimately, you have to rebound from relapse because it's hard to remain consistent and you're going to have some failures. And failures, remember, aren't truly failures. They are just pauses that allow you to collect data about how to move forward, that allow you to readjust and to move forward. And then finally, you've got to keep your focus on your destiny. Keep your focus on your destiny because ultimately, this is about moving yourself forward. So you've got to put in the work. And the last thing that I want you to remember is this, you've got to give yourself permission. I know that all of you remember when you were little and you would go on a field trip, and before you could get on that bus, you had to have a permission slip signed by your parent or your guardian. Well, you know what? You are the CEO of you. You are literally the CEO of your business. And it's time for you to give yourself permission. So write it out. Write out what is it that you give yourself permission to do during this time of transitioning from a disruption into an elevation. So write that out, sign your name to it, put it up on your mirror, and say it aloud every day. I give myself permission to be great. I give myself permission to create something new. I give myself permission. So, as we transition into questions, I want you to be thinking about what is it that you give yourself permission to do? And as we're thinking about that, I want you to focus on this concept of what an example, real life business case for disruptive elevation. I'm sure most of you remember Blockbuster when you were little. Or when you were young. And I may be dating myself, but I know one of the highlights of my high school days was going to Blockbuster on Friday night, picking out my movie. And initially it was on the actual video cassettes. And when we got big time, it was a DVD. And we got really big time, it was Blu-ray. But this was how we watched movies on demand. Well, here's where Netflix comes in to be the ultimate disruptor. Netflix decided to do things differently. Blockbuster had the market on lock, was the leader, and Netflix actually went to Blockbuster and asked them to acquire them. They proposed to sell Netflix to Blockbuster. The CEO of Blockbuster literally laughed at Netflix. This is ridiculous. And all of us today know that Netflix is the leader in on demand movie. They've really changed the way we look at media. And so, as we're thinking about giving ourselves permission to embrace disruption as a source of elevation, I want you to ask yourself, which one of these will you be? Will you be Blockbuster, where you're just hanging on to the status quo and refusing to evolve? Or are you going to be like Netflix, where you are the disruptor that changes the market and creates something new? So, with that, I want to open it up for questions and talk about how we can all become disruptors in our own businesses and in our industries.
Stephanie, amazing job. I think the way you've given us 5 simple areas that we could focus on to drive disruption or face disruption, because I think both can happen at the same time. At least I can be a testament to that. I think is really powerful. One question that's come up, and a lot of your questions were things that we should be answering in our business plan. And just like as we are thinking about our marketing and business strategies, in your opinion, what's the balance between the rigor of planning and being fluid in order to make sure that we really are, surrendering to the opportunities that are in front of us?
That is a great question because, I alluded to this earlier, that sometimes we can be caught up in thinking. And I know I like to call myself a great thinker. I love thinking and I do what I run the matrix in my mind about kinds of things. But one of the things that we've got to have a bias for, and that is for action, because at some point you've got to try out what it is you're thinking. And many times we think that we need to be ready, completely ready. We need to have everything perfect, or we've got to wait for the right time. And really, there is no right time. There is the time and what you do with it. So you've got to have at least a general plan, but you've got to move on it. And so sometimes it's by trial and error, where you just move on the plan that you have and you see how it goes and you adjust and course correct. And also looking at, a lot of times we'll look at what we've done wrong when things fail, but we also need to look at what have we done right.
Mhm.
And when you begin to focus on that, you'll get clues, you'll get indicators that tell you when it is you need to move, because you can see that when I've done X, Y, and Z, this positive result has come about. So it has to be this fluid process of looking at it, but ultimately you've got to commit to moving and not wait for the perfect time, because there isn't one. And to again make sure with these decisions, remember we talked about that step, is to cut off all other options. Well, waiting is not a wealth strategy. Waiting is not a wealth strategy. So you've got to make decisions to execute on your plan and not necessarily wait until it's completely finished. Sometimes you got to fly that plane while you're building it.
That's awesome. Okay, Takesha says she's giving herself permission to surrender. Gretchen said, terrific discussion. And thank you for making it plain for her to understand. I mean, I think her perspective is really great. Sometimes as women, we overthink. We're very hard on ourselves. So these are really great nuggets. I'm scrolling up, you guys, because I read it and I can't remember. My mind is, I'm stuck here. Okay. But we had some more comments and I'll scroll up in a minute. One last question for you. Oh, and your book is definitely getting rave reviews from Mary's. You talked a little bit about therapy, and I literally put in here like, oh, I love therapy. But can you talk about some tools, whether it's therapy or other things that you would recommend for us to do if we get stuck on some of those questions and we find that we can't really like continue to push for that disruption? What are like 2 or 3 things you might recommend for us to do?
Yes, because you may have seen me looking around. I was looking for my journal because that's the first thing I was.
Okay, this is good.
Yeah, journaling is such a great way to get thoughts out of your head, because there may be thoughts that you are experiencing it, quite honestly, you may be ashamed to share with somebody else, or you just need to get them out of your mind. But journaling is a very powerful way to get thoughts out of your head, because it's powerful when you see on paper what you really think about yourself, and then that equips you to make those decisions. So journaling, I would say, would be the first thing, because that's a private way of allowing you to get your thoughts out of your head. The second thing is affirmation statements. And you may hear this and think this is trite, but I believe, remember I said every thought creates a future. And when you create a vision, y'all have heard you have to make it plain so that the people can understand it. You got to make it plain so that you can understand it, and you have to say it to yourself. Here's one thing that I have found. When I write out I call them my I am statements. When I write out my I am statements, I'm a whole different woman than when I'm just kind of thinking about what I would like. So when you write out those I am statements and you say them to yourself daily, you create an energy that empowers you to actually become what it is you said you've written. And then the third thing I would say are, versions of masterminds or accountability groups, because you are powerful when you connect with like-minded people. Now, let me emphasize like-minded people. Everybody does not deserve to be in your circle, because everybody is not going where you are, and you've got to make powerful decisions about the people you share your dreams with, the people you share your visions with. So this is a huge responsibility, but it's very powerful. But, it can be one other person. It can be a group of 3, not a huge group, but accountability groups or masterminds, and their varying levels of that concept are very powerful, because it's really a helpful tool to share your thoughts with someone, again, with whom you can trust it, but who has their own thing going, and you use that synergy to create even more power. So those would be 3 things that I would say.
That's awesome. I mean, I really wanted to even probe into that circle, because I do believe, I mean, I know we're out of time now, but we're seeing that it's a continuous theme, even from the big picture. It was really a message being driven around your professional circle. And here, this is even about your professional and personal circle being important. And Deidre, I see you. Thank you. Stephanie is amazing. And Patricia, I saw your comments as well. You guys, Stephanie, thank you. This was amazing. I think you've given us ways that we can continue to push our thinking, push our minds to make sure that we can not only drive disruption, but face disruption in a way that will set our businesses up for success, and to set our individual selves up for success as we deal with these things in front of us. So, a lot of times we think, oh, we're driving the results and some of the emotional pieces we take off the table, but you've given us the balance of what that can look like. So this was super informative around how we can begin to shift. Tiffany, thank you. So many takeaways. I have to agree. And I mean, we all were like commenting in the chat about adversity guards the door to success. I mean, that quote in itself just really summarizes the strength of everything that you talked about, because the goal is to make sure that we can keep that door like clear and walking through it. So, and you are definitely a walking testimony of that. Thank you, Stephanie.
All right, you are welcome. And I just want to again encourage everyone to, take action now. This is your time. This is your life. Make it work for you.
That's awesome. You guys, we are supposed to be in net weaving right now. We're running a little bit behind time, but let's try to jump into net weaving. And even if we can get like 10 minutes together to interact, I think that would be amazing. Stephanie, again, thank you so much. You're really like a bad woman. So we love this. This is good. So thank you.
All right.
Because I see you in net weaving.
Okay.
Okay, bye.